Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great day and welcome to Spar and Brawl with Kam versus Sam. My name is Kam and I'm one half of your hosting duo. I'm joined by Sam Donishvar in the blue corner, my friend and sparring partner. Sam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks, and feeling a lot of energy today because I think we have really exciting stories, to be honest. And I'm really looking forward to one of yours, actually. So, yeah, it's very energetic, I guess, today.
Yeah, so as usual, we have hot takes. Hopefully, we're going to get into a few arguments here and there. And the first story that we're going to get into is the UK, sorry, not the UK, EU dispute, although we're going to get to that as well. But we're going to start with China and India. So, Sam, please go ahead.
Yeah, there were. I mean, there was a very recent update about 5 hours ago on this story. So the basically the headline of the story is that the recently tensions on the India and China border really escalated after uh, well, there has been pretty much 50 years of peace, but 20 years ago there were some shots fired as well. But since the last 50 years, the last 6 months have been we have seen the highest levels of tension between two, not necessarily two superpowers, but two of them two countries with nuclear arms. So at least militarily, probably considered superpowers. So tensions between China and India really escalated recently on the northeastern border of India, and it's sort of a western, sort of west-south border of China. And today they announced, both foreign ministers met in Moscow, and they announced that they are going to commit to de-escalating the tensions, which is, I mean, it's a very positive commitment. It's a step in the right direction, but in how effective, how much they can do that, though, is a bit in question, to be honest. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's possible to
But
de-escalate the
what's
issue.
what's at the root of the problem? The root of the problem at the borders. What is a dispute over land that falls within China or India?
Yeah, basically the root of the problem is that India used to belong to British Empire, right? So it was a colony of British Empire, and the British at the time obviously drew the map in a way to favor their own. And at the time, China was an enemy of the British. I mean, it was a dominated empire by the British largely. So uh, the borders were drawn at that time. That's the political aspect of it. The second issue was at the time when originally the borders were drawn were drawn at a time where there wasn't enough technology to actually climb, because we are talking about some of the highest places on earth. This is a mountain range. This is not a habitable, by the way, area. Nobody lives there. It's not a There is no arable land. Even in the lowlands, the land is not suitable for agriculture. Therefore, largely, the these the importance of these places is largely in terms of military and strategic, because if people are fans of Star Wars, they know that if you have the high ground, you always win pretty much. So yeah, the issue basically somewhat political, in that the roots of the issue is somewhat political, in that British, when they drew the map, they really favored their own side, obviously. And the second problem was that they simply didn't have the technology to go up there and see, like the geography of that place have during the last 50 years, they found out what exactly is there, basically. Before that, it was just a extremely high mountain, you know and yeah, so that creates enough uncertainty and murkiness for both nations to want to sort of lay claim to that. My it's yeah, but in terms of just the more, so this is the fundamental issue that causes the dispute, right? But there is also other issues as well. You have Tibet. This area is basically, this is at right next, like not next, this is basically part of Tibetan area of China, right? And Tibet, uh, obviously Tibetan, certain people within Tibet, they want to become independent from China, and they have their own religious leader who's Dalai Lama. And when China took over Tibet, Dalai Lama fled to India because India, they have great respect for his version of Buddhism and all that. So he's in India, and China, views that as a, as a sort of a political dissident that India is keeping in his back pocket, sort of for a rainy day or something. And they see that area as a gateway to Tibet, basically. If India controls that area, then it would be much easier for any coordinated action again, in Tibet. Then you have
That's very
Nepal.
interesting. So sorry, that's very interesting. So sorry to interrupt you. So the Tibet part, do you think that plays a major role? Then that makes sense from China's point of view.
Oh yeah, that plays a huge role. Tibet is a major from what I understand, the two thirds of the human population's water comes directly from mountains there.
So China's
You know, yeah, the Tibet, the mountain, because Tibet is basically a mountain range. That's why the population of Tibet is so low, relative to, if you look at the map of China, pretty much 90% of population is in the east south, and Tibet is very sparsely populated. Yeah, that's hugely. It's also very important for India because there's a valley there. There's a valley there that if China controls that valley, or if somebody else controls that valley besides India, then it valley and a high point, if I'm not mistaken. I might get these details in the geography wrong, so I apologize in advance to our viewers. But yeah, there is a valley there that allows for and a high point that allows for a very good vantage point. And if you want to bring troops in to India, it's a very good place for an invasion. So if, like, China, which is a very close ally of Pakistan, controls that, that's certainly not something that India is happy about. So they both have very I don't want to say reasonable, but they both have very, very rational security concerns about that area. Oh, and I forgot to mention that besides Tibet, there is an issue of Nepal and Bhutan as well, because Nepal and Bhutan, just like sort of Tibet in a way, Nepal and Bhutan are these are all viewed as sort of as fifth columns, that they could turn to the other side. Yes. And Nepal and India is very worried about Chinese influence in these two small countries, and that actually plays a role in the more recent detail of the whole issue. So, as you see, it's a very complicated geopolitical situation. You have all of that. About 50 years ago, in 1960s, if I'm not mistaken, in 1962 or something, there was a slight, I don't know if you can, it was technically defined as a war, but it was more like a military clash in which China really gained this is, by the way, this is my view, and my view is somewhat informed by Perry Anderson. Perry Anderson is an expert in international relations and editor of the New Left Review, and I think his analysis on India is, in my view, the most. He's somewhat controversial in his views of India, but that's like the view that I tend to agree with. And yeah, basically, 50 the war wasn't so much of a war. I believe at the time Indian nationalism was on the, like, India was talking a bit about like expanding. So China did a sort of a preemptive thing of taking over the land very quickly with their forces. And since then, that area has been, there's a disputed area which is sort of managed by both sides. But like, there's a very small piece of land. The military of both sides are there, kind of like the Korean situation. And that was 50 years ago. Since then, there hasn't really been any major issue, except 20 years ago, I believe there were some shots fired by China. And then you have since about 6 months ago, you have something that, look, I haven't been able to look at Chinese sources for now. So from here on, the more recent development, my view may be biased towards the Indian side. But what every news report I read, what most of the analysis I read, was that since about 6 months ago, China has started this thing called the salami tactic, where they slowly, move up and build up infrastructure to own the land. So they were doing that. And then you had a very major, very deadly clash, actually, about a couple of months ago, in which 20 Indian soldiers died and an unknown number of Chinese soldiers, where there were quite gruesome pictures because they don't have any guns in that area. So it was fought with clubs, and most people died falling off cliffs. So, it was quite barbaric in many ways. That happened, where Indian soldiers basically clashed with Chinese soldiers. So China is doing this salami tactic, and then you have India at the same time. So India is seeing that they are taking over the high point. So India managed to successfully coordinate with Nepal, go through their land, and outflank the Chinese forces and take the high point, the vantage point. Apparently, according to Indian reports, China has tried 3 times to reclaim that thing. They haven't been successful. And then you had a report a couple of days ago that there was a shooting heard. But I think I forget who accused who first, but I believe China accused India first, that they were shooting their weapons in the air or something, and then India said that is completely wrong. We've acted completely professionally, and it's the Chinese side that is shooting their weapons. And today you had the first positive development in a long while, that what's it called? The foreign ministers met in Moscow, and they said they're gonna de-escalate. This was, by the way, the military leaders of India had been meeting with Chinese in China and in other places during the last 3 months, trying to de-escalate with little success. That's the gist of it. It's a bit long gist, but that is the gist of it.
No, and I also heard that, is there any truth to this, that China doesn't mind occupying India with its border in order to prevent it from building up its navy?
Yeah, that's a very interesting analysis. That I came across that. That's in the more long term. I mean, all those small motivation that I gave were definitely true, but in the more long term thing, one of China's long-term policies of a way of keeping India under control or down is trying to stretching them militarily. So you do land because India is in a perfect position to dominate the seas, basically. They have I think they have the largest coastline possibly in the world, if I'm sure in the Asia at least, with a lot of ports there. They they have a they have inherited a great military and civilian shipping infrastructure from the British, which was a maritime empire, and they are like the southernmost point of India is literally on the line to the busiest shipping route in the world. So if India manages to put a little bit more focus on its navy and its sea power, it could really cause trouble for China, because China is it's got a bit of a strange shape. It has a bit of it doesn't have as much of a foothold as for example India or a lot of nations. Like Korea is surrounded by water, but China is just like that one bit. So India could really, like if they focus in their navy, they could really cause problems for China. So it has been such.
And they're like so centrally located in a way too.
Yeah, and they can basically block access to Middle East. They can cut off that thing. They can control that area. They can cause huge issues in terms of like even for Africa and for America, like they have to use longer routes because India blocks ways or something. And that's why China has, like some people argue, that's why China pushes India to invest in its land military. I was going to say in its in its normal military, in its army. And that's been suggested as one of the main reasons why China supports Pakistan, because when Pakistan pushes against India, then India again is forced to use its army. And this situation has had major local effects as well. For example, India has banned over 100 Chinese apps, if I'm not mistaken. Indian courts have banned over.
I think they banned TikTok too, no?
Yes, including TikTok. And at the same time, India is a startup friendly nation, and it's at the moment it plays a big part in their economy. And but a lot of funding comes from China. So startups are facing huge issues with funding right now in India. And at the same time, people protesting, I don't know how continuously, but they have been protesting against Chinese goods, calling for a ban on Chinese goods as well as the apps. So it's been a very interesting geopolitical situation, and it's been, by a lot of people, it has been described as another action consistent with China's new aggressive foreign policy that you see in the Sea of China or Japan, that you see with their activities in with Belt and Road Initiative. Did you hear about any of this or read about it because considering that it's two nuclear powered countries, plus they have the largest two populations in the world, to me somewhat surprisingly got little coverage.
I think so. This week around, I went out looking for it a little bit, and that's how I saw it. But I remember a few months ago when there were the clashes, then it was big news.
Oh yeah, you're right. The clashes got a bigger coverage than the recent developments.
Yeah, they got much bigger. But I was going to say something kind of unrelated, and I think it is. But the fact that both of these nations have nuclear power, have nuclear weapons, I don't know how much this changes any of these dynamics, because I find that we're so far away from that. Even between India and Pakistan, I don't think it's a very possible scenario that could ever unravel. I mean, I think whether they are nuclear nations or not, and whether they can use their I don't think it would ever come down to that. So sometimes I find like when that is mentioned, when when analysts are going over it, I don't think it's something that makes me more worried. For instance, because I think that possibility is very far away. So I can, especially even in between India and Pakistan, really, I don't see it ever coming down to that. And if there were nuclear powers, I think they'll be in similar situations. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I largely agree with you. That's actually that's the position of realists within the international the discipline of international relations. You have a school of thought that they describe themselves as realists. And Kenneth Waltz, who recently, about 2-3 years ago, passed, was probably the first guy and the major proponent of this theory. And realists have always argued that when you have, it's called the balance of power argument, Bismarck and all that. When you have two nuclear power states, the chances of war is far lower. And even Kenneth Waltz was famously advocated for Iran to have nuclear weapons to balance out Israel in the Middle East.
I mean, you hear that a lot, but even my point is even a bit different from that. I think that even if they don't have it, whether they have it or not, I mean,
I agree.
just because using it is such a devastating, out of all the things that the United States does in the Middle East, for instance, I don't think I highly doubt it's ever going to come down to them, using an atomic bomb, regardless of what happens, pretty much.
But I am the reason why I'm happy they mention it, maybe, or something, and I wish they mentioned it with a lot of other countries that use nuclear. I am more with nuclear energy. I am more worried about accidents and high intensity situations. And for example, the passenger flight that was shut down by Iranian military forces by accident, the Ukrainian flight. That I doubt that was on purpose thing. Maybe there was some conspiracy, I don't know. But my point is, I'm more worried about a high intensity situation where for example, in Pakistan, imagine a terrorist group suddenly breaks into a nuclear facility, and this type of thing does worry me. But largely, I agree with you. I think these type of things are highly, highly unlikely, and the powers themselves would never use these weapons. So it's basically more of a prestige thing, because they still clash in a traditional way. It's just it
No,
doesn't even prevent war necessarily.
Actually, coming to your last statement, but before that, you saying accidents could happen. Yeah, I can 100% see that as a much more likely scenario. I mean, so far, except when US dropped the bomb, the other incidents that we've had with nuclear has to do with nuclear energy. Well, not nuclear weapons being shot mistakenly, but there being problems with nuclear energy facilities.
There were even nuclear accidents with nuclear weapons. Like there is a famous case, I might get the detail wrong, but America I believe, was transporting 2 nuclear weapons from one, like a storage facility, to another storage facility, and one of them was dropped from the airplane by accident, and like they got extremely lucky that it didn't went off. This was like in 1950s or something, and then it got declassified about 10 years ago. So I'm more worried about incompetence and corruption than a strategic, like a madman, pushing a button, or that type of thing.
Exactly, because I mean, the ramification, the consequences are just so huge. I mean, there's no going back in a way, if ever any of these conflicts come down to that.
I agree. It's just, and especially to neighbors, because of the ecological, like, you know what I mean? Like if you hit southern Iran, for example, if let's say during Iran-Iraq war, if Iraq had hit southern Iran, they would have burned much more of the problem with the fallout than most of Iran. You know, geography is such a weird thing, and the way political geography is so different from the real geography and all that. So it's it's just I'm more worried about that, and I think you're right. It's madness. It's not just, even if you're mad, it's not gonna happen, I don't think.
Yeah. So hopefully these talks will kind of put an end to this in a way, so there aren't even any more of these clashes and disputes going on.
Yeah, hopefully, because I think China and India, if they work together, that's like that pretty much most of the world, and they can I think it could lead to great innovations, great leaps for humanity. You have such a amount of human capital and natural resources, so now we are done with our in-depth discussion. Please like and subscribe, guys, and help us to promote our channel and everything. Hopefully we are gonna increase our programming as well with more exciting stuff, so keep an eye out. Now we're going to go to our segment Quick Takes, which we discuss just more basically shorter news segments. This week we have some news about Julian Assange, some news about UK-EU relations, and some some developments in South America. So let's dive into that, and let's start with Julian Assange. Kamir, you looked into this news, and this is, in my view, is a very, very important story, possibly actually most important story of our week. So please tell us what's been going on.
Yeah, so the extradition hearings for Julian Assange resumed in London this Monday. They had been halted for about 6 months because of coronavirus. So they started 6 months ago. Before that, so let's just track back a bit. Before that, he also had the allegations against him for rape allegations in Sweden, but these were completely dropped around a year and a half ago, I guess. The prosecutors said that although there were apparently some evidence, just too much time had passed. So I think they mentioned issues with the victims recollecting exactly what happened. So I think based on that, that was completely dropped. So Julian Assange beat those allegations, and I think those ones had really tarnished his name. That was something that people had attacked his character if those allegations were in fact true. But anyway, and going back to that, it was about 18 months ago that he got released. He got kicked out of the Ecuadorian embassy. And that's when he came out and he was arrested. So these trials have resumed, and they're about him being extradited to the United States to face espionage charges, which some say could hold as much as 150 years of prison sentence. So these hearings are expected to last for about 4 weeks. And after that, the judges could deliberate for a few months even, and then if he happens to lose that, he could, of course, then try to, appeal and even go all the way to the European Court of Human Rights. So that's if he's found. So what's at play here? Let's talk about that. So these hearings that are going on right now. So the trial will not rule on whether Assange is guilty of any charges, but rather whether the British government can extradite him based on a 2003 treaty with Washington. If he gets extradited to the US, as mentioned, he could spend almost 175 years in prison if he's charged based on espionage. Although the extradition trial started over 6 months ago, the US just brought on new allegations this week, and which have been related to Edward Snowden, so providing assistance to the NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. And these are now a part of the case and could form part of a separate criminal allegations if he's returned to the US. And so Assange's lawyers are now saying that this shows that the US is once again moving goalposts, because as mentioned, these hearings had started over 6 months ago, so it had to be paused. So in a way, 6 months later, now they're bringing all these allegations. And of course, charges against him go way back. So there was plenty of time to put everything on the table. really. And then, so because of so just a little reminder for everyone, these allegations are based on the Iraq and Afghanistan war crimes that he revealed. And these include the infamous Apache helicopter shooting in Baghdad that Chelsea Manning released the footage, which really showed American soldiers shooting at a van which had Reuters journalists, and then when the journalists left to go and they were trying to help pick up people and put them in the van, people who had been hurt, they were shooting at them once again. So that is really one of the bigger revelations, I think, that WikiLeaks revealed as it concerns the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. So I think that is kind of an overview of what is going on. Sam, do you have anything to add? Oh, and sorry, before I forget, the trial was put on pause again on Friday or Thursday, yesterday, because one of Assange's lawyers, I believe, could possibly test positive or had positive for COVID-19 or had come across someone who had tested positive. So for now, they've been paused until Monday, but they're set to resume on Monday.
Yeah, this is a story that genuinely just pisses me off. And yeah, I saw Glenn Greenwald talk about it as well.
What did he have to say? So if everybody remembers, Glenn Greenwald is the journalist who revealed all of Edward Snowden's leaks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's just so when he goes into the details, your blood starts getting really boiled, basically. The reality is he didn't break the law in any way or shape or form. And they have been trying to get him. Basically, they've been trying to get him and break WikiLeaks, right? So they couldn't prove that he did anything wrong, because everything he published, everything WikiLeaks has published, has also been published by New York Times, has been published by Washington Post, has been covered by MSNBC. You know what I mean? Like if they get him for the publishing aspect of it, then it's end of free speech. Like not just end of free speech, it's like a very bad end of it. Free speech being burnt alive, basically. That's what it is. So you have that.
So I think that's why the Americans are trying to say that they're not charging him as a journalist, but rather as a hacker. That's kind of their answer.
Exactly. So what they're saying is that he provided assistance to the people who then leaked the documents. Yeah. And their argument is based on the fact that he helped them like encrypt the data and help, this is the type of the hypocrisy is just mind-blowing. American government funds Voice of America. This is a channel aimed basically at back in the days, it was aimed at destabilizing Soviet Union. It's aimed at destabilizing Iran. They have loads of channels they fund on their channel, constantly promoting different ways, like promoting VPNs, different ways to go around firewalls in China, in Iran, and websites, like a lot of newspapers, New York Times, they have on their websites describing ways that you can, remain anonymous while contacting them. Mm-hmm. So it's ridiculous. What they're doing is just beyond mind-blowingly ridiculous, especially considering that about a week ago, there was a court that came out that said Edward Snowden leaks were all, what US government was doing was illegal. And it was a whistleblower, it was a leak. So it wasn't an act of espionage, right? Act of espionage, you are working for a foreign government. It's a different thing. And just to add the human aspect to it, this is a man who has 2 small children whom he hasn't seen for 6 years. His physical and mental condition has apparently deteriorated to the point that he doesn't really understand where he is sometimes. Apparently, according to reports, he wasn't given a mask for COVID except during the time where he got to meet his children. And they said, if you meet your like if sorry in his meeting with his children, they told him, if you touch your children, we'll self-isolate you for a period of time, I believe 14 days. So this is beyond, like, this is cruelty. This is the exact type of cruelty that he exposed in his leaks, showing American soldiers doing all kinds of unspeakable crimes, which I personally don't believe is, they were not bad apples, they were not exceptions. They are, this is the type of behavior that somewhat systematically is promoted. And you can see now, whenever somebody is against you, they do that to you too. And it's, yeah, it's disgusting, because from the, like, from Glenn Greenwald explanation, even if even if he win, like, this court cases is gonna drag on for so long that there's a good chance he's gonna be in prison for another 5 to 10 years, even in the end, if he gets, some justice. It's very, yeah. It's just, it makes me very angry. Oh, and the judge, she's a judge who's been apparently openly anti-WikiLeaks, with a very bad record, even sending back journalists to Turkey, country that is famously has the most amount of journalists in prisons. I think, yeah. So, but if she does, vote in favor of extradition, obviously the Assange team will appeal that. So who knows what's going to happen in the end, but the outlook is very, very negative, and it shows the cruelty of US government, to be honest.
Yeah, and apparently he hadn't even seen his lawyers for the past 6 months while he was in prison, and they put him in a high security prison, which of course he's not accused of any violent crimes.
Yeah,
So,
he's locked up with terrorists and like murderers and violent, violent. Even if you believe the worst rumors and the worst interpretation of Assange, he should be in. We're talking about white collar crime. Yeah, we're not talking about violent crime. It's just, yeah, they're trying to kill him. They're trying to give him COVID. They're trying to destroy his brain. It's fucked up. It's really fucked up.
no, I mean, this guy has been locked. If you consider, go back to when he was in the Ecuadorian prison, I mean, since then he hasn't really had direct sunlight.
And apparently, even in the embassy where he was going a bit paranoid, and apparently they have all his discussions from that time. Apparently, even he used to meet with people in the female bathroom, talk to his lawyers and stuff there, because of the worried that he's being recorded. And apparently even there they had a Christmas tree, like a tiny Christmas tree with a video camera in there. So he's compromised pretty much.
Yeah, and I mean, now it's just the kind of the Iraq and Afghanistan war are in a way getting a little bit whitewashed recently. I mean, just with George Bush kind of re-entering the U.S. political, U.S. political whatever games that they played. They're kind of trying to like brush that over. It's not as fresh in people's memory as it was 5 or 6 years ago. So, I mean, the fact that the main things that he revealed were U.S. war crimes that everybody agreed on. Sooner or later, at that time, people started agreeing. Was he also the one, did WikiLeaks also release all the photos of the torture that was going on in the Iraqi prison?
I think so, yeah. I have to check that for sure, but I'm pretty sure that yes.
Yeah.
They that
But
and
then what they did to Chelsea Manning, I mean, the cruelty there. I remember during the Chelsea Manning trials, the Chelsea Manning lawyers showed that she was pretty much kept in a coffin for a while when the US found out that she was the one who had leaked the footage. So, I mean, both of them have been through so much. I think Chelsea Manning she wasn't convicted at the end. About a year ago, it seemed like she had kind of put all that behind her, But again, she was called into court. I can't remember over what, but a few months ago. So I'm not
Yeah,
sure
you're
about the
right.
exact updates, but they're still messing with her.
Yeah, we should look into that for our next
Yeah.
episode.
And just
Yeah.
what talking about the hypocrisy there about Voice of America encouraging similar acts from Iranians, it just reminds me of the when it comes to protests. So the U.S. government, anytime there any government does, anytime there are protests in countries where they don't like the regime, protests are beautiful. The people are out here, they're talking, and as soon as it's against them, it's only about rioting and bad things. And of course, this is not legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Even in a smaller, like partisan way, if you look at it, whenever there was a protest of Trump supporters or people who were protesting against the lockdowns, oh, these hooligans, these violent monsters, these uneducated plebs. But when it is black people, justifiably, I'm not underlying, like, I'm not saying, but I'm not taking sides here. But whenever it was somebody who agreed with their general outlook, for example, the George Floyd protests, suddenly, these great people fighting for justice, and oh, COVID, what's COVID? Have you heard about COVID? No, but so yeah, it's like I mean,
I think we
it's
talked about this like a few weeks ago, but protests are worldwide. They're covered in the most partisan,
partisan.
like extremely biased way possible.
Exactly. It's you cannot really, yeah. It's very difficult,
It's
and
always like that.
partially I understand it. Part of that is due to the chaos of it all, but at the same time, it's a very hypocritical way of approaching things. It's just, yeah, I can't believe they are. And by the way, let's be clear: if they do get Assange for this, if they do convict him in the U.S. for what they want, for at least the things they are so far have said, that's the end of uh, that's the end of journalism in America. That's the end of largely, like, independent.
Do you give some credit? Do you give some credit to President Obama for not, at least not prosecuting him during that time? I mean, he didn't do him any favors whatsoever.
Oh,
But
they tried. They looked into all legal options. No, I don't give any credit, because I think he actually, this has started, the legal proceedings started under him. It's just yeah, I think his arguments were far more nuanced, that they wouldn't have undermined the whole like free speech and all that.
these
But no,
arguments now, it just sounds like, they always recycle the same arguments. So I forgot to mention this, but on Tuesday, apparently Assange was just kicked out of the courtroom for just a short period of time because he shouted nonsense. And this is because the prosecutors were talking to one of the witnesses, and the witness was saying that what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks revealed were war crimes and all this. And then the prosecutor on the US side, I guess, they turned it into the usual thing that, oh no, he let out like confidential information on specific US soldiers. That's always their first argument, is like, oh, you're putting
oh yeah,
our troops into danger, as if like he printed like their passport copies with their location or something. That is, anytime you talk about like, oh, what is going on in this war, the government doesn't tell us too much, the first excuse that they always go to is that, it's for the security of the personnel. If not, everybody will know where
you
they
know, to be honest, assigning the missions to those soldiers or spies, that didn't put them in danger, sending them to most, no, exposing them. And by the way, what kind of, like, if you're a spy, that's the, like, if you're a spy, what kind of job do you think you're doing? Do you think this is like some you're a, I don't know, you're a graphic designer in some a startup that, oh, I have my security and then I do my 9 to 5? If you're fucking a spy in China or in Iran, you know the risk you're taking, so it's just a childish argument for 5-year-olds. And yeah, it's it's one of those you keep thinking. No,
But
I just
this one argument
what I
always
do.
comes to me.
I just want to emphasize I give Obama no credit whatsoever because and Democrats as a whole, and because a lot of them that are coming back to power now are uh, even more hardcore pushers of putting Assange in jail than Trump is, for now at least. And yeah, it's yeah, there are no good guys in this story except Assange.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's probably time to go to our next story. But please remember to like and subscribe.
Yes, definitely. And we also put timestamps in the description box below. We still haven't figured out how to do it in this way. I see some YouTube videos where like the actual video is timestamped.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
highlight.
So you
So
can, so that's great. So, but anyway, for now, we put everything that we talked about in this episode, everything's timestamped in the description box, and also links to it, stories and sources and everything discussed here. Everything can be found in the description box.
yeah, hopefully as we go along, our infrastructure is going to be improved. So yeah,
Yeah.
bear with us.
So tell me about the Venezuela story. I didn't hear much about this, but it sounds juicy.
Oh yeah, the Venezuela, it's a bit of it's not, that's why I put it in quick takes, because it's a development more than a news story. But there are elections in Venezuela in December, and Juan Guaido, who I believe most of our viewers know as the guy US is trying to make a Venezuelan president, although he's recognized by majority of Western countries as the legal president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido has called for a boycotting of the elections, and he says that it's you know people should not participate in the elections. This is not surprising, but this led to even you can see the splits in the opposition to Maduro, because Capricas, who was a presidential candidate who came second, I believe, against Chavez or Maduro, I'm not sure, but he's a major opponent of Maduro Chavez project, and he's also respected. I believe he's largely even Chavistas, as in like, I don't think he's corrupt. He's not famous for corruption. I believe he was a mayor of Caracas or governor of the Caracas state. I'm not sure, but at any rate, he another famous, I forget her name. She's a lady who has opposed Chavez and Maduro from very beginning, from 1990s. All of them have basically called Maduro's argument childish, and
Not
yeah.
Maduro's argument, you mean?
Oh, sorry, Juan Guaido's argument childish, and they said people should participate in the elections, should try to beat um, Maduro.
And they've been close. The last few elections have been close, I think. It's not like one of those ridiculous elections where it's like 90% Maduro and then.
Yeah, but also to be fair, a lot of allegations of vote rigging, and I'm sure some of it is true.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not a fan of Maduro.
But I'm just pointing out that the results aren't these ridiculous ones that you've been hearing.
Yeah, it's not like Soviet Union style, like 92%. like the Belarus is a good example. Like, yeah, about 98%, 0.8%. It's crazy. But
But I think the guy is seen as a joke. What is his name again? Juan what?
Juan Guaido, I think he's in. I mean, US tried to force him, and he.
But the way they tried to force him to, in a way, didn't do any long-term favors for him, I find. I mean, just bringing him to the State of Union is the most ridiculous thing ever.
Look, that's what I thought at the beginning. Like, I mean, for him, like, US is like damaging him. But then later on, when I found out more about him as a person and all that, he's a fucking grifter. He's just a grifter. He has connections with hardcore right-wing militias. He's basically a thug that is, got lucky. So Yeah, he's basically milking U.S. government. He's trying to get his hands on as much money as possible. He was trying to get his hands on the Venezuelan gold in UK. I hope, because I remember that was a couple of weeks ago. I hope I haven't missed the judgment on that. He's a grifter trying to get his hands on as much money as possible, basically. But I'm glad that he's becoming isolated, and it's gonna be very interesting. Hopefully, fingers crossed, when European powers and America later on have to walk back their recognition of him and have to, because this is ridiculous. They've basically recognized the imaginary president of Venezuela. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I love Dave Chappelle. I want Dave Chappelle to be American president. So I'm going to act as if Dave Chappelle is the American president from now on. I'm going to have my treaties signed with him. This is like, he has no control in the country.
Yeah, just childish stuff. And I think once we get closer towards the final stages of the elections and when they just start throwing everything that they can at each other, Venezuela will come back up again. And I don't even know, Trump will probably accuse Biden of being like a Maduro sympathizer.
Yes, possibly. He already has, yeah, he's in the pocket of the left. So.
Well, that's funny. Okay, should we move on to the next story?
Yeah, this, I know it wasn't so much of a story, more of a just look at that idiot, but please like and subscribe nonetheless if you watch this video, and yeah, join us and try to hit the bell thingy. Apparently that helps a lot with our algorithm, so
Yeah, the alerts. I don't personally do that though, so I try not to push it on people. I subscribe to all channels and I like everything that I watch, unless it's something that's not good. But the alert thing, I must say, I'm not even into it that much. You use it?
I don't do it, but if somebody's not bothered by doing it, because I am, because I justify it this way. My main way of getting information and updates and news is YouTube now, right? I don't even check websites as much. So I justify that I'm checking every second, so I don't need that. But if somebody has that as that helps them, that doesn't annoy them, please do it for us.
Yeah,
please, we beg you.
My method is more of the subscription part on YouTube. So I just go straight to that and I look at the latest thing that I'm subscribed to.
I recently found out on YouTube you can have a add-on, by the way, that you can organize your subscriptions into like news and sports and all that.
Interesting.
Get a Chrome extension. So yeah, just you see this show, you learn a lot too.
Okay, so the next one, I'm sure most people have heard about the Oxford coronavirus vaccine, the trial getting halted. So I'll just go over details, give a few takes, and then finish up by saying what I think this means. So on Tuesday, it was announced that the phase 3 trial for the coronavirus vaccine being developed with Oxford University had to be paused. So this one, the phase 3 trial, involves around 30,000 participants and it's taking place in the UK, Brazil, South Africa, and 1 or 2 other countries. So the reason that they halted is that one of the volunteers, one of the participants, she was a British lady. She had very serious adverse effects. I think it sounds like it's quite serious. I think she's recovered, but it had to do with inflammation in her spine. So she ended up in hospital. Yeah. So it was serious. It wasn't like a small adverse effect. I think that's why they've really had to stop it. So what we know so far is, of course, this wasn't one of the placebo patients. It was one who actually received the vaccine. So as many have pointed out, pausing a vaccine clinical trial is not that big of a deal because once something like this happens, pretty much what they have to figure out right now is whether this had to do with the vaccine or, it was just some other disease or incident that happened. So I think that's really what we're waiting on now.
I guess if it's to do with the vaccine, how common would it, is it 1 in a million or 1 in 100 million?
I guess that's the next step, if they figure out that it has to do with the vaccine, right? Because I mean, at first it could come out that it had nothing to do with the vaccine. And
Yeah.
one of the thing is, but I haven't been able to find much information on this, but this is the second time, not for the same exact adverse side effect, but apparently during phase 1 or 2, they also had to stop the vaccine trials just to make sure what was the issue. But I couldn't find much information on that. And this other part is also, I'm not too aware because it's complicated, so I'm not sure about I don't understand that well to explain it. But apparently the vaccine that Oxford is working on is very novel in a way, and it's different than past vaccines. So apparently technology is quite different. I heard this coming from the person in charge of he's the CEO of the organization in charge of the Russian vaccine. So take it for what it's worth. But the Russians, especially, they say that they're developing a much more traditional kind of vaccine where they are aware of its impacts when it comes to different diseases, whereas Oxford apparently is developing something very novel. So here are some of the reactions. The WHO is, of course, saying that the delay is a reminder that not everything is going to be straightforward when it comes to the developing coronavirus vaccine. And others have said, well, this is actually a good thing, because if anything, this is really reassuring to everyone that there are rigorous processes in place. So that is true, at least as long as it comes to with the Oxford vaccine. So now a committee will have to find the results and see what the issue was, and then recommend whether it can continue or not. So I think a lot of people have tried to downplay this and say that it's either a good thing, and this happens during trials, and trials are paused a lot of the time. So I agree with that, but I think one thing that makes this a bit of a bigger story is the fact that it was the Oxford one. Because I think the Oxford one has the best name to it right now when it comes to getting the public trust and support behind it, whether it's in whether it's in Europe or the States. So I think the fact, and it is apparently the one that is most advanced in the phase 3 trial. So although there are 5 or 6 vaccines in phase 3 trial, this one was the most advanced one. So I think that, coupled with the fact that it was the Oxford one, I think if this issue is serious and they're going to have to really pause it or just completely scratch this candidate, I think just because it happened to this vaccine, it could have quite big ramifications and concerning to developing a vaccine that will be ready by the end of the year or early next year, and also gaining the public's trust. So yes, in a way, it's good that now we know that there are these, that is being monitored and just doing whatever. But at the same time, the fact that it happened to this vaccine concerns me a little bit. And then just some updates on the Russian vaccine. So the Russians released their data in the Lancet medical journal for the phase 1 and 2 trials. And then there's a group of scientists, European scientists, I think mainly from Italy, who have written an open letter to the medical journal saying that, hey, some of this data is just, I think what they're saying is that some of the results are too similar between each other, and that they're reporting 2 different responses. I think these are their 2 claims. But anyway, and then they're asking that the Russians and the Russian company.
So basically, they're saying the data may have been artificially manipulated.
Yeah, so they're saying maybe the data was tampered, exactly, and they're asking for the quote unquote raw data. And the medical journal has pretty much responded by saying we're encouraging the Russians to respond to these allegations. And I just saw, but this one response from apparently a US-based scientist, I read it in the Moscow Times. So just so you're aware. And he was saying that the data, the fact that some of them were similar is not really a big concern, given that since there wasn't that many people involved in both of these trials. His explanation was somewhere around that it's not actually that big, it's not that strange that this is what the data looks like. And so the Russians are continuing with their trial. So although they've registered there, they have a trial going on with, the aim is to get 40,000 volunteers. So yeah, those are pretty much the updates that I have on the vaccine trials. But yeah, like I mentioned, I really think the fact that this happened to the Oxford vaccine could makes it a much bigger story. And so, and the other thing is that it's already been 2 to 3 days. So this announcement happened on Tuesday, and so there hasn't. I think this means now we're Friday, and I still haven't found anything. So I think this, it wasn't like the most obvious thing, because they said they're going to start by looking at the patient's, medical records, to see if there's something obvious that shows up. But the fact that we're already Friday, makes it a bit concerning. I mean, it's only been a few days, but then again, how much resources and money is being invested in these vaccines. So I find that to be also a tiny bit concerning.
No, you're right. There are lots of, actually, following your discussion about the Russian vaccine a few weeks back, there is this great video. I hope we put the link in the box later on. There was this great show a couple of days ago by SciShow. So they do it's a great YouTube channel focused on scientific, like hard sciences, like chemistry, physics, that type of thing, usually medical stuff. They did a great video which I watched, and I thought it was the fairest video, which dived into the Russian study and said that the problem with that Russian study, why people were a bit negative about it, was that they didn't release their data from phase 1 and 2, which, as you said, they've just released. But then they also pointed out, that's why I say they were very fair. They also pointed out that many other studies in the past, and same like COVID vaccine studies in America, also didn't do, not exactly that, but similar things to that. For example, didn't publish the data from phase 2 or from phase 1, one of them, or didn't even carry out like animal testing phase, or it's called a pre-phase or something. I forget.
Yeah,
so it was a great video about that. So yeah, it's basically the thing I got from that video, and then from the news you just mentioned with the Oxford studies, that I think, again, the initial coverage of the vaccines was way too hopeful. It's a very delicate science. We should wait and see, basically. And there are a lot of potential pitfalls. Yeah, we won't have it until we have it, basically. And all this, trying to guess the future stuff is probably not very good. We should just, we should not get our hopes too high or too low or anything. Just,
I think
that's the
matter of, I think it's a matter of time, of course, but I think it's easy to see, I feel like the next 6 to 8 months, as long as there aren't very positive results that come out with the vaccine, because you look at the cases. I mean, I think France had 10,000 new cases in a single day, a day or two ago. So if you look at the number of cases, I think we're going to have more of the same type of lockdown here, lockdown out there, to manage it easily into the summer.
I mean, we discussed this maybe before, I don't know, but I generally think there should be more pressure by the populace and political party, whoever, for more medical facilities. They keep saying that we don't have enough. The hospitals are being overrun. Why are the hospitals being overrun?
But that's still being said, though. I hear that less and less now, about some countries at least.
Yeah, because the infections went down, I think, not because the infrastructure was improved. I think, I'm not sure. This is me more nagging. This is not an educated criticism. But I wish, I hope, I agree with you. I think that's the way we are going. I hope it's not. And I hope they find a great vaccine, but I doubt, I very much doubt we're going to see an effective vaccine until mid-2021.
And who's going to get that vaccine? Because let's say, I don't know. I feel like I'm too biased towards this Russian vaccine. But so far, in a way, it sounds like one of the more promising ones, at least that one and a few from the US side. So let's say like Russia develops that vaccine, right? For instance, all the pre-orders put from the US or from EU have nothing to do with the Russian vaccine, of course. I just heard Australia, half of the vaccines that had pre-ordered were apparently from the Oxford one. So, it's not like Europe is going to go get vaccine from Russia. So in a way, I mean,
No,
even theirs developed.
if it's if it's effective, they will go get it from Russia. That's their usual thing. That they first, they put their competition down as much as they can. But then if they can't, they have to get that. But
I mean, convincing the population at that point that, hey, we're going to go with the Russian one with all the shit that they talk. I mean, in the US, there's no way it would work. Maybe in like Europe, but I don't see that working in the US.
Yeah, they'll copy the chemistry thingy and then the formula, and then they change the name to, patriotic vaccine, full American vaccine, red and blue and stars. I don't know. They put some American sounding name on it,
and there are 150 vaccines being developed, to be fair, and there are 5 or 6 already in phase 3. But like I said, the name recognition that this Oxford one would have had, let's see what happens next week or so, but it can be a much bigger blow simply because, I mean, so what? So the Oxford one will be completely scratched off? I don't know.
Look, it's going to be a blow in terms that I think there has been so much. That's why you hate the coverage of the news these days. There has been so many, new vaccine from Oxford, blah. This, there has been so many contradictory and overhyped. No, not necessarily contradictory, but overhyped coverage of the news that I think people are going to lose complete trust in everything. As you say, for example, imagine trying to administer Russian vaccines in Midwestern America, where tensions about Russia and China and the fact that, this Chinese virus, maybe this is the way Russians are, smuggling in some disease. It's going to be...
For sure, like legitimate, real American politicians are going to be pushing those talking points.
Yes, and this is somewhat commonly known to people who study these things, that in Afghanistan, for example, and Pakistan, that has been a strategy of Taliban since very long time ago, that they say that if polio vaccine, whenever UN and people like that come to do polio vaccine, they say, they're trying to reduce male fertility rates in our country. They're trying to kill Muslims. They're trying to do this and that. So it's, this is like, you can see how opportunistic and amoralistic politician would use this to win elections. And if there's a way to use it, politicians will use it.
And speaking of elections, I mean, I think if I were Trump and it's mid-October and there's still no vaccine, I mean, I would try to rush something and just get something like, hey, this one is made or something, and then this one is approved by us, or, because I mean, that's it. After that, it's November. And most likely, in the most optimistic timelines, results for phase 3 trial will be coming on in December. So he'll still be president, but he would have either already won or lost the election. So if he wants to come out with a vaccine thing, he has about like a month and a half.
I understand.
He doesn't care about it, like, backfiring 2 to 3 weeks or a month later, if he happens to get reelected.
That's a good point. Yeah, like just a week before election announces, and then they're getting ready to administer that shit, and then oops.
Yeah, I mean, that's whatever. That's problem for another day. And I've mentioned a bunch of times Operation Warp Speed, which is the US manufacturing these candidate vaccines before their phase 3 trial. And I'm surprised the Trump administration doesn't really openly talk about that. So if there's a vaccine, they can be like, hey, not only did this one get the correct phase 3 trials, but we have Operation Warp Speed going on. So by January, we're going to start vaccinating the population. So I don't know. I think he's going to try something. I don't know.
No, maybe it's in Trump's playbook. And it's just, he's such a fickle it's literally in his playbook. It's like, I don't know if you, this is probably, I'll save that for our end story because it's a bit of a funny one. But I don't know if you saw his tweet about the generals and Afghanistan and all that. But yeah, I agree. This is definitely possible with him to pull a car, like, yeah, I found the cure. I found the cure for COVID. Yeah, if you want the cure, you have to vote for me tomorrow. Like, you know, or in 2 hours. If I'm not the US president.
It will give him a big bump.
All right.
But okay, that's Russian vaccine for us. So now let's talking about the US and US politicians. Yeah, you had a funny Michigan story, right?
Oh yeah. All right. So I'll put them all together then. This is this will be our election coverage. Hopefully we're going to do a better, more separated segment on it next week with more details and graphics. But this is just a quick update on US elections. First of all, you had Trump, who said that, you know, they said that military generals and all that, they all endorsed Biden. They've all have a very good view of Biden. So Trump came out and said that, yeah, well, you know, military generals and stuff, they don't like me that much because of the, you know, they want the war to keep going because of the profits for their companies and all that. And, but, you know, the soldiers love me. They love me. So, which was, you know, but by the way, this is one of those moments where Trump says something that only like a communist would say or something, like goes full on like Bernie Sanders. So I love that he said that. Then you had media in CNN, MSNBC, they lost their shit, man. Oh my God, he's implying that our generals might be corrupt or might have, you know, conflicting interests. But that's not the funniest part. The funniest part was that then Glenn Greenwald, he tweeted the famous, you know, the famous Eisenhower speech, his farewell speech. He was American president after Truman, the second American president after the World War II. And he famously, on his farewell, he said that our country is starting to be dominated by a military industrial complex, basically referring to the revolving door between the Pentagon, the arms manufacturers like Boeing and all that, and, you know, and he said they have, you know, they obviously have interest, and that could erode our democracy and our liberal values and blah blah blah, which it definitely has, and pretty much everybody believes that and knows that, except apparently CNN and MSNBC. So Glenn Greenwald posted tweeted that, and Trump retweeted it.
Oh my
Trump,
God.
bloody fantastic. And I believe Glenn Greenwald changed his name to Pardon Assange.
Oh really? People have been pulling off that trick recently.
Yeah. I love Trump. I love how fickle. Like, if, for example, if tomorrow, I don't know, Iranian supreme leader or why am I even making a hypothetical situation? North Korean leader called him a dotard, which is basically a mentally challenged old person. And he called, and then the next day they're hugging and he loves him. They're exchanging fatherly son letters. What the fuck is going on? I love him. He's the best. He's like a cartoon version of a politician, you know?
No, 100%.
So yeah, that was Trump being terrible and fun. And the story from Michigan is a bit more just terrible. You had Rick Snyder, I believe, who was the former governor of Michigan, who was the governor of Michigan when Flint had their water crisis, where there was significant amounts of lead in the water, which contributes to significant brain damage, especially for children, pregnant women, and all that. And I believe a lot of reporters still say there are still issues with the water in Flint. And he's a Republican. He endorsed Biden, which, by the way, at this point you can say, all right, he's a Republican, he's trying to get some media attention, he endorsed Biden. It's not Biden's fault, it's not Democrats' fault, sure. But from what I understand, they very much accepted his endorsement. They flaunted it. And yeah, it was another spit in the face of the progressive movement. You had people like Michael Moore, who's from Flint, Michigan, I believe, or from Michigan anyway. He came out and said that, yeah, people are very angry. People feel broken. There were some interesting even analysis of the fact that Hillary, for example, lost Michigan by about 10,000 votes, and at least 8,000 like Black Africans didn't come out in Flint because of the, lack of enthusiasm. So yeah, it's just another one of those stories that makes you just, yeah, fuck, everybody's, they're out there to get us, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, it falls into the strategy that Democrats are now employing, which is after getting all the Democrats that are aligned with their vision of the party, is to not go for the progressives, but rather to go for Republicans. And this was pointed out also in the speakers that they had invited to the convention. They gave more time to Republicans than left-wing ones.
Yeah, you're completely right. But again, that's what Michael Moore actually exactly said. But he argued that I think they're making a strategic mistake because there is no more white working class people that you can, like, at this point, whoever hasn't in from that segment of the population, they have decided there's nothing else Trump can do or not do that can change their alliances. So it's a strategic mistake. They can't increase their voter share there. All they're gonna do is dampen their excitement within Black communities that form a large part of the population in Flint, Michigan. But yeah, I mean, not much of a. I don't know if directly these two news, they may not directly be related to the election, but that's our, I guess, update on U.S. politics.
Yeah, and I mean the Democrats, I mean, they could say that they were the way they got all the endorsements for Biden at that crucial time. I mean, they acted very strategic there. So they might say, listen, we know what we're doing, but I guess we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, I think their strategy is not as a whole wrong. I think their strategy here is wrong, but I think they're banking on fear mongering, media fear mongering, and this is a very common strategy used, by the way, by not just by establishments all over the world. You create chaos, you create terror, and then you present yourself as the only person capable of controlling that chaos and fear. So I think that's what they're hoping for. I don't know how successful they will be.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a contrasting and sad story to wrap up our quick take section. So again, everybody, please make sure to like and subscribe if you like the video so far. So the title of this article, which was published in The Guardian and then republished in a bunch of other places, was called "Why Are Elephants Dying? The Race to Solve the Mystery of Mass Die-Offs." So The Guardian reported that earlier this year, more than 350 elephants mysteriously died in Botswana. So this impacted not just male or not just young elephants, but in elephants of all ages and sex were affected. And apparently with many of them walking in circles before suddenly dying and collapsing on their faces. So the mass die-off in May and June has been described as a conservation disaster. But I mean, it's sad. It sounds like something very, very sad. And they still haven't wrapped their head around what it is. So all the elephants have apparently also left that area. So the remaining elephants that were there, they've left. And it's been reported that elephants are now reported to have started dying in a similar way in neighboring Zimbabwe. Not in such high numbers yet, but apparently around 20 or so have also died, and it's unclear what the reason is. So they have ruled out poisoning and poaching so far. So these are two explanations that people might have come to their mind, but apparently those two have been ruled out. The primary suspicion that people and that scientists have right now, although they haven't had access, I believe, to the elephants who passed away, they've only managed to collect some data and information on those elephants that left the area subsequently. But they believe that an algae blooms are the primary suspects right now. So local sources estimate that 70% of the elephants that died in Botswana died near waterholes, many of which contain blue-green algae blooms. And they're saying that rising temperatures and intensive farming methods are fueling an increase in algae blooms in rivers, lakes, reservoirs, and seas around the world. And so then they've come back. I mean, some are saying, well, a lot of other animals are drinking water from these lakes, so how come they're not dying? But the only explanation that has been offered, once again, scientists haven't really been able to research it so far, so we don't know. But they're saying, well, the amount of time that the elephants spend in the water and the amount of water that they can drink is huge compared to other animals. So it could perhaps explain that they're taking in a much higher concentration than any other animals are exposed to. So I've looked for more information on this story, but apparently it's really The Guardian that's been doing the reporting. They reported a few months back, and now they reported again. I guess the real update that happened this week was the fact that elephants were found to die in a similar way in Botswana. Sorry, in Zimbabwe. This time. And toxins from farming have also been ruled out by the Botswana government. So it's really unclear so far what has led to the sudden and very...
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear what has, I mean, if I'm not, oh yeah, okay, you're right. It's not clear, but I do think, you know, algae blooms are really a result of increased human activity and climate, you know, our increased negative contribution to our existence on this planet. And it's such a shame because I believe they are, you know, they are formed in fresh waters because of like, you know, because water does not, has too much basically rubbish, and you know it's not a I assume it's not a natural thing to happen, but it's so sad, man. That's fucked up. That's really fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, in the Guardian article, to a point, they say that rising temperatures and intensive farming methods are fueling an increase in algae blooms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, human activity and elephants. I mean, people, we like to think of ourselves as such as special beings because we feel emotions and all that. Well, elephants, you know, it's quite interestingly, apparently they have, there is a chance this might be an old wives' tale, but I think it's true. I believe they have graveyards, like specific places where they die. They mourn each other, you know, highly emotional animals. So it's very shameful.
No, and I mean, just imagining a scene where all these 350 giant elephants have suddenly died. I mean,
collapse.
Yeah, horrific. Okay, so we have one last quick take for today, Sam.
Sure. Yeah. This might be a bit of a long quick take, though. But
Medium.
We'll see. Yeah, medium take. Yeah, exactly. Some new developments on the whole Brexit British EU relations, which I found fascinating, and to be honest, is something that I think we might have some, you know, some new way of looking at. Last week, basically, British government announced that Boris Johnson's government, the Tory government, they announced they're gonna put forward the legislation. I forget there were leaks first or they announced it, but at any rate, it came out that they are going to put a legislation in that would cause changes to the law in a way that is not in line with the withdrawal agreement that they have with the EU. The withdrawal agreement that was signed less than 12 months ago by this government, and which was taunted by this government as a great deal. so to speak. So they're gonna basically they are changing the withdrawal agreement through internal legislation. The legislation is also called the Internal Market Act, I believe, or bill or whatever. So they are trying to basically amend the withdrawal agreement using internal legislation. Their argument is is actually, because the government's argument has changed in less than a week. Their original argument was that no, we are not breaking international law, because EU said they're basically breaking international law by through, you know, it's like you are signed up to a treaty and then you introduce the legislation that contradicts that treaty. So you're breaking international law. That's what the EU claimed, right? Britain is saying, no, we are not breaking international law. We are exploiting unclarities within the treaty. Like there are gray areas. We are legislating to protect, that was Boris Johnson's original argument. We are legislating to protect British businesses and provide state funding for sectors that might be in danger, right? That was their argument. But EU said, well, no, you're breaking international, you had a treaty with us and you're breaking it. And basically, yeah, everybody went crazy, including some of the backbenchers of the government, including the former Prime Minister, Theresa May. And a lot of people have come out and said, yeah, this is not just, let us put aside that whether this act is a good act or a bad act, this undermines trust and, British position in international politics. Nobody will trust us anymore. EU has threatened legal action. And it's fascinating. It's another case of Boris Johnson, in my view, basically throwing a wrench into the whole thing and causing a whole lot of problems. He's been criticized for breaking international law, for undermining confidence in Britain, and basically being a hypocrite, like not a hypocrite, flip-flopper, because there are so many videos of him saying, this is a great deal. This is a great deal. And now he's saying, well, not that great. But, perhaps the most fascinating part of this whole ordeal was, I forget if it was in House of Lords or House of Commons, but one of the members asked the member representing the government that, please explain this to us. And are you assuring us you're not breaking international law? And then the government representative said, no, actually we are in a very limited and controlled way, we are breaking international law. This is very commonly done by us and many other nations when it is in line with national interest or I forget the details, but yeah, they did basically say, yeah, we are breaking international law. And that's where, like, pretty much everybody is criticizing Boris Johnson for this. The only people who are happy are hardcore Brexiteers, because they never liked the withdrawal agreement, and they hope this will cause a harder Brexit than what already imagined. But I must say, even I am a bit, because I was following the EU negotiations with Britain, and maybe I am very cynical, but I see the same trend in the EU negotiations with Greece, with Britain, with their behavior towards Russia. They constantly leak shit to newspapers that UK is not being cooperative, UK is not being clear, UK is doing that. Their strategy is always leak, one-sided leaks, and then present ourselves as this above the fray. Oh, we are just doing love. Oh, we are EU, we are professionals. We don't, support crazy people like Trump. We only, supported Berlusconi for 20 years, that, child molesting son of a bitch. So, we're good guys. They're such hypocrites. And they were doing the same again with Britain. And I'm sorry, but it's international politics. This is not like a legal dispute between two neighbors in London. And I don't know, Guardian, when you read Guardian and BBC and these people come and say, oh, the trust in Britain. I'm sorry, but nobody trusts Britain. Nobody ever trusted Britain. The idea that people around the world were saying, oh, the British, if they sign something, you can count. What are you talking about? Britain is largely in people's view. I'm not saying this is good or correct, but the general view of British is these, fox people who are the most conniving Machiavellian people in the world. And what, now everybody owed the trust in British government? What are you talking about? So I don't understand that argument. And a lot of people are saying that Boris is doing this as a way of, this is a way of changing the media narrative and getting more from the EU in the final deal that they come up with. So I think, in a way, good on him. Well done to him. I have to look into the specific details of the act to give a genuine judgment. But as a political maneuver and tactic, fair enough. Good for him, in my view. And if you are representing a group of people or a nation, that's how you should act. You shouldn't I wish left did more of that. I wish left did more of lying and then doing something else. No, I'm not joking even. I genuinely mean it. Like sometimes, especially in dealing with foreign powers, you should say something and then you should do other things. That's always been the case. So I don't understand what's the big deal, or what's it? But I do realize I'm a cynical son of a bitch as well. So hopefully you have a more nuanced take on it. Maybe, I don't know. Help me out here.
No, I think that was a very good breakdown. And so I think the last part you answered the question that I had, which was why would Boris Johnson be doing that right now? So you think is to hopefully get more from out of the deal?
Yeah, I think it's probably to get more out of the deal and to change, because he's been under, especially after in the beginning of the COVID, his policies were popular. Since then, not so much, and he's been under attack from his own party as well, whom they've been finding his chancellor an attractive option as well, because a lot of the good response for COVID has been attributed to him. Because in UK is a very strange situation where you have prime minister, but chancellor is almost equally as powerful as prime minister. So I think it's partially a media sort of tactic to get his Brexit supporters a bit more, oh, this is our Boris. Oh, an angle I forgot to mention was the Irish border angle. The Good Friday Agreement is based on...
Yeah, I was going to say, from my following this story superficially, I thought that was at the heart of it.
That's because that's at the heart of the US-UK relation issue, because Good Friday Agreement, which ensures peace and freedom of movement between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, is based on EU treaties. This withdrawal agreement legally addressed that. The internal market may lead to to be honest, I've been reading into this. I don't understand all the legalities of it, so I probably make mistakes. But there may be a hard border in Ireland as a result.
That's what the Europeans want, right?
No, no. Everybody says they don't want that. Everybody says they don't want that.
I thought the British didn't want the hard border, but I thought the Europeans wanted the hard border.
No, nobody wants the hard border, because
Okay.
By the way, the hard border, I'm not sure at all about this, but I think even in that scenario, when we are talking about a hard border, it will be for goods. not for people, right? Nobody says they want the border, because if you introduce the border, there is a good chance that the radical groups in North, Catholics, and probably in the South, restart their activities again. That's the fear. The peace they describe as fragile. I am not sure a lot of people are raising this criticism that how fragile the peace actually is, and will we actually see radical groups like in 1970s bombing places? Seems like it doesn't seem something you can imagine right now, but it's definitely possible. So nobody wants the border, but because of the legal situation, it may become inevitable. Like when you have a legal situation where foreign goods in the UK must be inspected, blah, 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 so it may become, it's a inevitability that everybody says they are trying to avoid. I think, to be honest, it's a political issue that Europe uses to, uses to sort of twist the knife into Britain because of Brexit. I think that's the EU's view. At the same time, I think British government doesn't care as much as the Irish government, because Irish government was very angry about this issue. And that's why you thought that was that's why you thought it was the biggest probably issue, because some people say that some people say that US has told UK you must come out of the customs union to have a deal with US. Customs union is a part of the EU. Some countries choose not to be part of the political EU. They are just part of the custom union, which basically means there are no tariffs, right? And in the withdrawal agreement, Northern Ireland remained in the customs union, right? So another motivation for
before it was in the custom union only, right? Or before Brexit started.
Britain?
Yeah.
No, Britain was in the EU.
It was in the EU, okay. But I mean, what's the difference? How come they didn't adopt the euros?
There was an option with euro, you could opt out, and then Denmark did. So
UK, until like a few years ago, was, for instance, equally as part of the EU as France is?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
I would agree with you. It wasn't as integrated because of the euro and because of other issues. Like for example, there are no major European institution in the UK, So you could argue they weren't as integrated, but as a member, they were legally an equal member. And so another motivation for Boris Johnson or Tories as a whole to do this is to take Northern Ireland out of custom union to be able to have a deal with the US faster and easier. Irish, famously, they have a strong lobby in America, bipartisan lobby in Republican, because a significant number of Americans come from Irish backgrounds, right? And America played a big role in during the Irish-British wars and all that. So at the same time, you had the Democrats come out. I think this is more aimed at Trump. This is aimed at attacking Trump's administration because Trump administration said you must take Northern Ireland out of the customs union. So Nancy Pelosi came out, gave a speech saying, I was informed in the middle of the night that Britain is just turning its back on the Good Friday Agreement. Why are they? By the way, in the end, I haven't looked into the minutiae and the details, so maybe I agree with people that this is a bad bill, this is a damaging bill. But the way they present shit, it's just they make it like it's a soap opera, like a Turkish soap opera, and it's just why did they do that? Why? Because they're politicians. What the fuck do you think? Like, because they're trying to survive in this world. but yeah, so you again, that's how American politics connects to this. It's a very complicated issue and very interesting one. But I, yeah, my hot take of it though is I really admire Boris Johnson's way of challenging the EU. Like, he just doesn't back down in their high-minded, their self-righteous attitude. I love that. I love it.
All
It's
right.
just like, yeah, we're gonna break the international law, and what you gonna do about it, dear? Yeah.
Very nice hot take. But yeah, so let's say, I mean, there's what, how much time is there left for there to actually be for the divorce to happen between the EU and UK? About a year, right?
I think, yeah, yes, I think so. Yeah. No, sorry, Boris Johnson gave a deadline. He said if until 15th of October, this October, there is no deal or like at least I guess a sort of a placeholder deal, he'll end things, and he thinks then that's it. So 15th of October.
I see.
And again, this was before this, I think, whole internal market. I respect that. You should show that you're willing to walk away from the table, because EU is it's just, again, if this was the original case, maybe I give EU more leverage, but sorry, more lenient. I be more lenient on EU. But I've seen the same thing with the Greeks. I've seen the same thing in the way they they treat Russians. They just, you see that the way they treat Trump, Iran, everywhere. This is they they're so self-fucking righteous. I guess they're so self-righteous. I hate that. They think they're better and more sophisticated and more educated, and that Boris Johnson, even though Boris is a posh douchebag in many ways, but I like that about him. He doesn't back down.
And I mean, he didn't create this gigantic mess that the UK is in right now. And I mean, just the saddest thing over this whole Brexit is that it all happened with complete bullshit arguments from both sides. And now they're here.
Yeah, I agree. I think in my view, the saddest thing about Brexit is the level of importance. It is genuinely not as important for the UK as they're making it out to be.
I think it kind of has to do with what I've been thinking this whole time, is that, it has nothing to do with whether you're part of the EU in a way or if you're not part of the EU. It's what you do, what the other policies that you do. So the UK removing itself from the EU is neither good or bad for the population. It depends what policies they replace it with and what deals they can replace it. So it just depends what happens under either of these scenarios.
Yeah, but I would add two caveats. One is that you can see from the people behind the movement, you can see what policies they want to put forward as well. So it is true that the people behind the Brexit were largely, not everybody, were right-wing, somewhat xenophobic, perhaps racist people. And I do think UK, because they never gave, as you mentioned, actually, they never adopted Euro. That's very crucial. That means they never lost the control over their own money. Greeks were in a far worse position than British. If you have lost basically control of your own monetary policy, your own fiscal policy, largely, I don't know what can you do, So UK was not, like, it's far more difficult for a government of Spain to do the same than it is for the UK, because UK had its own fiscal and monetary independence. For others, it may not be as easy as what policies you choose.
Yeah, and even other kind of control. So, for instance, they're not even part of the Schengen. So, Europeans going to the UK, they get their passports checked and everything. So,
But you have countries like Switzerland, which was not and is not part of EU, but is part of Schengen.
Yeah.
So
I
such
mean,
a
I
mess.
think Switzerland has, I mean, absolutely no choice given its borders with France and Italy and just the circulation of people going on between these
It's
countries.
a landlocked. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
have access to sea, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, for instance, in Geneva, a lot of people live in France and they work in Geneva because the borders within some of the borders are within 5 to 10 minutes away from the city. And you're suddenly in rural France, which is much cheaper than Switzerland, you can imagine.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay, but it's good to hear about the UK and the EU. I kind of missed it, with coronavirus and everything. Brexit was put away for a bit, but now it's back. Let's see.
I like when it's this kind of, yeah, I like it when it's kind of, I don't like it when it's just a scaremongering. If it's been predicted after leaving EU, half of British workers will commit suicide or something. Like, it's just, come on, just chill out.
Okay, so based on that, let's transition to the study of the week that talks
Definitely.
about a group of workers. So I'm going to read some stats right now that will back this claim, but many people have pointed out to the fact that it seems that coronavirus infections and deaths in the US seem to much higher, proportionally much higher when it comes to the Black population, especially non-Hispanic Black Americans, so African Americans. So for instance, in Louisiana, although African Americans comprise 33% of the state's population, they represented 60% of the deaths. In Wisconsin, they're just 6% of the population, but they represented over 35% of the deaths. And so this has these numbers that I just read has brought a lot of people to believe that, okay, is it to think, I mean, are there some biological reasons behind this, which I think just sound absurd. You could just point out the other countries where the same thing is not happening. And so, why are the cases so low in Africa, although due to other things, but if people were so much more susceptible to coronavirus. But anyway, instead of coming up with all these reasons, a nice scientific study has perhaps shed some light on why this is the case. So the researchers here pretty much look like the occupations that a lot of African Americans are involved in the US, and they found that they were disproportionately part of jobs and occupations which were deemed essential, meaning that they had to go to work at the height of the pandemic. So so this is what they found. They found that African Americans were nearly 3 times more likely than whites to work in healthcare support jobs. So 3 times more likely in healthcare, and in places such as nursing or orderlies. And Blacks were also twice as likely to work in transportation roles, such as bus drivers, movers, and taxi drivers. And African Americans are also more likely to serve in 7 other occupations that were deemed essential during the pandemic. So food preparation, for instance, and working in supermarkets. So the researchers correlated these job classifications with COVID-19 deaths in 26 states, and they concluded that all of these jobs placed workers at higher risk of infection and death from the novel disease, of course. So they wrote in conclusion that structural disparities, not biology, continue to increase COVID-19 related racial inequalities. And, just the findings of this study, I think not only, puts a bit of an end to the conspiracies on, was there biological differences, but it also kind of points out how, the slogan of we are all in this together when it comes to coronavirus is true in some ways, in the sense that everybody can get infected, but at the same time, the position that people are in and with highest socioeconomic status compared to those who have to do essential work is just puts them in a totally different situation. So in a way, we are not all in this together.
That's fascinating. I was a couple of days ago, actually, I was seeing this interview with the American academic Adolph Reed with Katie Halper, which is a fantastic, by the way, journalist. Highly recommend checking her channel and her podcast, Useful Idiots. And when she was talking to Adolph Reed, he was pointing out that he was criticizing, I believe, like, I don't know if they were studies or coverage of corona that that he was saying that until they take into account socioeconomic uh, uh, factors and dynamics, you cannot get a clear picture of the different ways that corona is affecting different people. And by the way, personally, I am for more and more understanding about our biology and our genetics, but in a correct and in an academic way, not in an idiotic. For example, people, it's just racism is so stupid. There is more genetic variety among black people living in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, than the whole world put together. So we have to understand that differences in physical features are different from genetic differences, and all range of things. If you want to actually truly gain a better understanding on ourselves. And there are a lot of studies that I remember. I read a study in the UK. Poor people were, this was a long time ago in the early COVID days, that poor people are being infected at a rate 7 times higher than a middle class or poor richer people. There was another study in Iran which showed that the number of foreigners in Iran dying from COVID deaths in foreigners is twice the percentage than it is among Iranians. So, like, if proportionality speaking, they're basic, and largely foreigners in Iran are foreign, low skilled foreign workers doing some of the jobs you mentioned, or even more risky jobs, usually mostly coming from Afghanistan. So they're naturally, they belong to a lower socioeconomic level of Iranian society because they had to flee war and they're forced into some of the most difficult jobs out there. And yeah, it's just again shows that pangolin, I believe, the animal that was the root of all this corona thing, it's in China apparently it's a status thing. Eating exotic animals is a like super rich, because it was illegal. Pangolin trade, I believe, is illegal in China. And you see that again, crimes committed by some of the wealthiest and most idiotic people in the world who eat animals because of some really unscientific beliefs in their powers. And now the poor people have to pay not that they pay the price, but pay a significantly higher price than the people responsible, which is, it's very sad.
And that was a really interesting take there. That is so true. And I mean, this study only really looked at the occupational, where the people are working. So I mean, on top of that, you can add so many other socioeconomic dimensions of, big families living in a small house, access to hospital, and being able to go to the hospital when you want it.
Access, as we discussed, access to clean water.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Flint is a majority black city, I believe, where they had the major issues with water. And, for example, with corona, we know if you have pre-existing issues, it's a major,
I was going to say exactly. And typically people in lower socioeconomic status can often have more underlying either commodities that they couldn't address and or they weren't able to address, because again, everybody does get sick, but everybody can get sick, let's say. But what happens when you do get sick, or the chances of you getting sick by environmental factors really depend on what you do in life, really, your lifestyle and your position in society.
exactly. And yeah,
But yeah. So that's
it's
it for
very
this week's study. There was another study I wanted to look at, but I'm gonna leave it for next week or something. And it's been mentioned. I haven't read the study itself. I've just read the headline. I think it's being mentioned in the news here and there, and that is that they found that political ads, at least political ads in the US, are not as effective as perhaps previously thought. So that's maybe something I'm going to try to look at for next week, because this week there was also some news that came out about, I think Trump doesn't have that much money left right now. They used up a lot of their money, and of course the Biden, although during the early stages of the election, during the primaries, he kind of ran out of money. He didn't have that much money, but since he became the nominee, I don't think money's an issue anymore. And of course, they're saving probably all their money to bombard ads across all the channels in the next month or two. But yeah, so maybe I'll look into that study, and if it's interesting, we can talk about it next week. But so before we wrap it up, I think we have two kind of mine's not a feel good story. It's just ridiculous, and I'll just have a 30-second rant to go with it. So I don't know who should go first.
Yeah, no, go with your rant. I think let's start with a rant and then we end with more fun.
Okay, I mean, these gender reveal parties, I'm sure everybody's aware of gender reveal parties. So it seems like it's a new trend. I've only been seeing it for a year or two, and I've only seen it in America, where pretty much they have this little party to find out whether the baby is going to be a boy or a girl. And they call these gender reveal parties, and they usually have something to do with either a balloon or something exploding, some kind of fireworks. And if it's blue, that means you're going to have a boy. And if it's pink, that means it's going to be a girl. So officials in California have blamed a gender reveal party, this happened last Sunday, for one of several wildfires going on in the US state. So the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection blamed a smoke generating device used during a gender reveal party for the start of the blaze. So this is not the first time where a serious incident has happened, because they all revolve around some kind of firework thing or something exploding and colors coming out. So in last year, several large-scale parties went wrong, even resulting in the death of a woman. And in 2017, a gender reveal party in Arizona sparked a week-long wildfire, which burned through 45,000 acres. So, I mean, these gender reveal parties, not only do they happen to be apparently very dangerous, which they don't need to be, but I mean, it is the most backward thing in a way. I think if you want to talk about, people not having fixed gender and your sex not determining who you are and who you're going to grow up and who you should be, because this is the part that gets to me, is the blue and pink color. So if they used two random colors, then it would make me think, okay, well, it's a little party, we're gonna have a boy or a girl. But the fact that they go for blue and pink, it makes me think that these people who have such gender parties, they're really, already imagining that, okay, if it's a girl, she's gonna be doing this, that, and this, and not this. And if it's a boy, it's gonna be doing this and this and that, because boys do this and girls do this. So, I mean, if someone really wants to have a party for this and they're not the kind of person that wants to impose a specific type of gender on their kid and pretty much telling their kid who they should be, maybe they should rename them as sex reveal parties.
Oh, wow.
I think if they're sex reveal parties, then I won't have this issue. And someone can come back to me and say, like I mentioned, no, hey, we just want to know, if it's which sex, and this is fun. I'm good. But then what's up with the blue and pink?
Okay, wait. First of all, let's something. I disagree with you there quite a lot, actually. I was surprised at how much I disagree with you. First of all, I completely agree that gender reveal parties are shit. I've been to one in Tehran, and they've been around for 5-6 years now, and I've seen them, I've heard of them in Europe, in Iran, everywhere. And yeah, I agree, they're shit. So, there is you don't need any extra reasons for hating. But wait, I didn't know, I guess maybe that's me. Oh, wait, let's talk about the real issue, the fires. I come
that's the real issue, I would say. For me, that's a secondary issue that is just on top of that, doing stupid things. But
but I guess environmentally, that's the
yeah,
major. But I come from Iran, where they regularly there are forest fires, and because of that they always blame somebody having a picnic or somebody leaving a cigarette or something like that. And I've seen so many detailed programs and so many experts, and from what I understand, a lot of times it's just blame. Like they don't, like it's almost nigh impossible to find out what are the origins of forest fires, and governments for just basically shedding responsibility from the fact that they allow increased dryness of the air, they allow increased deforestation, they allow for all of that, and then they blame somebody having a cigarette, somebody picnic. So
I mean, climate change. California is just breaking all kinds of heat records. So I mean,
yeah,
let's not forget about that.
It's a very quick way for government. Oh, somebody left a picnic. It had nothing to do with all the trees being as dry as.
It's so funny that you mentioned this, because this story came out on Sunday, and the whole week I was thinking about that. The whole week I would go and check out the story to see for a secondary explanation to come out, but they're sticking with this, it seems. I mean, it's almost like 5 or 6 days now.
And people regularly die at frat parties and that type of thing. So I don't think, like, that woman, I don't know how she died at a gender reveal. The balloon just exploded in her. She had family, so I shouldn't joke about it. But that's one thing. So that's issue aside. That's like the real issue. But about the gender, I'm personally maybe pretty much I'm sure about this now. But I am far more conservative than you are, I think, in terms of gender. I believe there are defined genders. I don't believe in a fluidity of genders or that type of thing. I do believe there are male, female, and intersex people. And that's as far as I go. So I agree with you that, for example, in Victorian times, it's quite interesting. In Victorian times in Britain, blue was a color for girls and pink was a color for boys, for example. So these things are not fixed, or I don't believe blue is for boys.
But now that's what it represents.
But in this context. But I do think that they should have an understanding of which gender they are. And I completely agree with you. These type of parties are shit and stuff. But, as I get older, it's more, I find these things are more excuses for people to get together and, just the reason to see each other, because we've lost a lot of our traditional reasons. Like, let's say Sunday Mass. How many people go compared to 20 years ago? So I find these are perhaps more, I like them in terms of, if you look at them as a secular way of finding a way to hang out with family and friends. But I agree with you. They are nightmares from hell, really.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah.
So I think with the sex and gender thing, then we have some differences there. Because yes, I do agree that there are two sexes, and there are some people, use the word intersex. Is that?
I use intersex are usually people with both sets of genitalia.
Yeah. So I heard that, yeah, which isn't, so let's just forget about that for a small second.
That's probably something we should discuss in another episode in depth.
Yeah. So, but two sexes, but whether if you're a boy or girl, and whether you're born a male or female, and what you're going to end up doing in that society. So if you're a boy, that means you're a man, and man should be doing blah, 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 and this. That means there's fixed. But I don't think it's fixed. These are just things that we're coming up with, especially in today's contemporary societies. Whether someone's male or whether someone should be doing female. So since there are unlimited options of what either can do, there can't really be any fixed gender roles.
All right. Okay. Sorry. I completely agree with you. There are no fixed. All right. Maybe that's the better. There are fixed biological genders, but no fixed gender roles.
Biological sexes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because there are loads of people who say your biological sex is not even like because of the way you phrased it there, that you said if they want to have the gender reveal party and basically tell their child who they are. So
It seems like no, but it does go to the extent, especially because of the colors. I can just imagine that means they're already making all these associations with what this kid should be doing
yeah,
down,
but
down the line.
that's like inevitable. Like your parents are they can't not do that. Like the food they make for you is probably the food that they enjoy, right? And they want, but it's not out of they're not being malicious. They want you to have the better things, but how do they define that better thing subjectively? But yeah, I understand what you're saying, that if you if you tell a child that blue is manly, then that child will associate blue with man
I
with
mean, later on, you're going to do different things, right? So you have a boy and a girl. So you make the girl do gymnastics, for instance, but you're like the guy plays football, and if the girl wants to play football, and like, oh no, I just feel like it seems to me when you pick those two colors, I really have a problem with those two colors. Really, it comes down to that because I think to me that says it all. If it was a sex reveal and these two colors weren't always used, maybe people don't overthink them, and I'm sure some people have this gender reveal parties in the exact same way, and they're like, hey, you're just
Cam.
projecting how you how you see the world on us. Maybe it's not the case, but if it is, it goes contrary to everything that is being said right now. And I mean, it's a very I guess, conservative development,
Cam,
I would say.
feel safe. This is a safe place. Were you as a child really into pink, and then your parents forced you to wear blue shirts? Like
I
I
hate
wanna.
pink in general. And
I don't know
that
though.
could be subconscious sexism.
You
I'll take that criticism if that's the case.
it does feel like you're protesting too much. Are you in secret? You dress in pink all the time?
I find it the most, I don't know. But anyway, there's no such thing as an objectively nice looking color. So of course this is some kind of subjective take, my problem with the color pink. But
No, I think your problem is with the, I guess, like associate. If it's pink, it's a lady. If it's blue, if it's a boy.
and
Yeah,
from
I
that
agree.
derives a whole other set of norms and
That's
expectations. In most
that's
cases, I mean, that's what it seems to me.
yeah. No, I understand. It's the same concept that these jobs are for men, or that those jobs are for them. Yeah, I agree. It's a much more uh, benign version of that leads to that. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so that was my, I don't know, feel good / rant. Pissed off.
Great rant. Great
But
rant.
that was a very interesting point how you brought out is that I never understand that too, about how they can know so quickly what was the source of like a fire, because it's never like, oh, we're going to be carrying out like investigations and we'll come back in a month. Like this one happened on
Yeah,
Sunday, and I guess they knew this could have been
yeah,
an obvious one because who knows exactly what went wrong and if these people
yeah.
had a crazy device. But
No, it's a common. I've seen it so many times, and then I saw a couple of. It wasn't my original criticism. I saw some experts on BBC Persia. They said and the guy seemed really tired. It was like, enough of that. Like there are these massive fires, yeah, hectares and hectares, and then yeah, there was some guy, he dropped his cigarette. Like this is not how it works,
yeah,
It's, yeah. So yeah, it made sense to me, because yeah, you're like, yeah, there must be some underlying cause that the fires just
yeah.
spread like mental.
And of
Oh, yeah.
course, yeah, we're complete. Let's not forget about global warming and climate change. And just like I mentioned, record heat in California. Okay, Sam, we don't have too much time. You have 5 minutes for your story.
No,
After I ramble for God knows how long.
yeah, there was a story. To be honest, I'm not going to really cover that story. I'm just going to read the headline because it's a very funny one, and but I just saw that before actually we started our show. But just for laugh, China's UK embassy calls for Twitter to investigate after ambassador's account likes pornographic tweet. Pornographic tweet. So hopefully we'll come back to this at some point next week and discuss exactly what kind of a pornography it was. Was it hardcore? Was it softcore? It was. I have a feeling maybe the ambassador was drunk, and or I don't know. But it seems like a funny one. Hopefully, we'll discuss it in detail.
And there was, I think, the Brazilian president. He literally retweeted. I can't remember, but I think he retweeted.
Oh yeah, he retweeted some trans.
He didn't even because I think I can see like one thing where like the social media manager is like liking everything that they just see on their feed in the hope that that person would follow them back. Although, I mean, if you work for the consulate, you shouldn't be that concerned with your number of followers. So even that's a shitty excuse. But I know that's like a common tactic on Twitter, just going page and liking everything. Although I do that sometimes for this other project, and I never end up in the pornography area of Twitter. So I don't know what they search. Okay, hashtag climate change. Let me like it. So I don't know what
change my climate.
Yeah.
Make me go from cold to hot in 10 seconds, baby.
Wait, who was this again, though? It was the UK consulate, you said, in China?
Oh, no, China's ambassador in UK.
Okay, well, maybe they're not too familiar with Twitter. That could be his justification. They have their own social media platforms. Such things that happen.
Yeah, Ambassador Liao Jiaming. I'm sure I'm butchering that name, but yeah, this is a ongoing story. I'll keep a close look.
Yeah,
I'll make sure any update, any development. Yeah. What kind of pornography was it? Did anybody intentionally choose that pornography? It's just so many questions. This is not something I can cover in 5 minutes.
Follow up on that. And I just had a question on our main story from last week. So any developments between Turkey and Greece and the gas drilling?
And not that I have to look into. I'll get back to you.
Because I didn't hear anything, right? Last week they were supposed to have start talks.
I think there was maybe a slight de-escalation or something, but I have to look into it.
So we'll look into that for next week. Okay. So on that note, all the stories that we've mentioned, even the ones that seem like I just brought them up because they have a personal agenda, they'll all be linked below. Please like and subscribe and share, and any comments, questions, or anything, leave them in the comment section below. We actually had comments from last week's podcast, and we
great comments. Thanks. They were very informative about the Turkey-Greece situation, about the islands, and actually there was a development right after their comments. There was a spy on one of the commenters. I'll give a shout out next week to both of them, and thanks. They're very informative comments, and thanks for giving us more details about how islands and all of that situation weaves into the Turkish situation.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we're covering so many stories, and, we definitely don't have expertise in all these areas. So there'll always be information to be added. I think people might have realized by now that Sam knows quite a bit about the Middle East and just things going on in that region. But besides that, we don't necessarily have any kind of specific expertise in any of these kind of news areas. And we cover such a wide range that
even about the things we might be experts, there are significant challengers, and there allegedly we are not, so who knows.
And we'll keep bringing on guests once the channel grows a bit and guests agree to come on the show. Bringing on expert knowledge. But okay, so all the information is below. If you liked, please like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all.
If it doesn't annoy you, ring the bell.
Yeah, hit the little bell.
Thanks.